So in our $33 million industry, probably have one or two competitors because it's extremely difficult to penetrate and to win market. You have also a lot of dead bodies in the industry, people that tried and didn't succeed. But you choose your own challenges. I was debating on LinkedIn often during the last month about all these great AI companies that are proposing to cut down the cost of operations for many companies in our industry. It's great, but they're not going to survive the next 3 months because somebody a little bit cheaper or faster is going to come up and is going to totally eat them alive.
Michele, welcome to Tech Scenes.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. Been working on it for a little bit, and why don't we just start from the top? Why don't you tell me about Secro?
Of course. Hello, everyone. So, Secro is a workflow automation platform that is built to serve cross-border trade. And we focus on those documents that are the hardest to be digitized, the ones that are being the biggest pain point for our clients. And our clients are banks, insurance companies, logistics service providers, and a trader of commodities.
This documentation, has this just been in paper format for years? Is that what's really happening and it's changing to a more secure digital way to do this?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Question. So for those who are not very familiar with the cross-border trade of commodities, raw materials, they need to know that everything is done predominantly on paper or with classical Excel and Microsoft Word and email style of approach. So processes are very broken, very prone to data leaks. Cyber risk is massive, and frauds are everywhere. So what we promise to our customers is to mitigate the transactional risk by digitizing on a very secure platform those business critical workflows. And yes, predominantly everything is done on paper. So when people are asking who's my main competitor, the answer is usually the mailman.
And tell me a little bit about the fraud. Like, I don't know a ton about international trade, but I think it must be really complex when you're working in that environment, and there must be a lot of fraud out there. And what can you do if something like that even occurs?
Yeah, there really is a lot of fraud out there, and fraud can be asking for finance with the same invoice 3 times from 3 different banks, or when the cargo arrives at destination, in some ways the cargo gets discharged from the vessel, but the buyer overnight defaults and the bank doesn't see the money. Right, so this is very typical, happens pretty much every day. And the best way to protect is to identify users, identify companies, and authentify documents. And we do the latter. So we help companies to be sure about the chain of trust in every documentary transaction from any country in the world to pretty much any country in the world.
And if there is fraud, I would guess that insurance companies get involved within that, and it would probably be very complex when it's international. Is that correct?
It is very complex. So you have usually multiple type of insurance covering each transaction. So you have, for instance, cargo insurance to protect the actual goods. You have credit insurance to protect against counterparty risk. So if the buyers doesn't pay at port of destination, in some ways the insurance company covers for the cost of the missing payment. And you have other forms of insurance, but every form of insurance boils down to the ability to identify the risk, and the risk is linked to also the quality of the information that are pegged to each transaction. The majority of the informations are sitting into the document that is supporting the transaction. So can be a warehouse receipt, can be an invoice, can be a bill of lading. And what we do, we make this chain of trust and this data quality much higher. So also for
Yeah.
insurance companies, it's easier to estimate the risk, mitigate the risk, and price the risk.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And then I would guess not only on the risk side and the fraud side, but I mean, I think even in simple transactions, you see people accidentally billing more than once, or there must be a lot of errors that happen in this world as well, especially when it's paper.
You're very kind to call them errors. Yeah, those instances
So tell me
are
the truth and what is happening.
extra. So you usually have a lot of double billing or double financing, and this is possible because you can just make a copy of a document and you go to different providers, to different banks, and cash twice.
Mm,
And when people find out, usually you did it already for 20, 30 times, and you shut down your company that is maybe in Cayman or Australia or whatever it is, and it's too far away to reach and to get the money back. So what a platform like Secro can do can make the reputation of a party using the platform much more robust, because if you're on the platform, it's very unlikely that you can easily double dip. So it's kind of
hmm
maybe it's counterintuitive. You cannot have everyone on the platform, but you know that who is on the platform is a serious player.
Well, let's back up a little bit. You started your career in the Navy, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
And
yeah.
and what were you in Italy,
In
if
Italy,
I'm not
yeah,
mistaken?
yes, in the Italian Navy, I served for 12 years.
And what were you doing back then in the Navy?
I was catching pirates. So I did many things, but this is the highlight. So I work a lot in um, counter smuggling and in border patrol operations in the ICs. And part
Okay.
of this was also to help with the protection of merchant vessels in the Horn of Africa. So today I'm fighting kind of new type of pirates that are more sophisticated. They're more on the cyber side. At that time, I
Right.
was actually chasing pirates that were hijacking vessels.
That's super interesting. And then you navigated your way to Amazon for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in between the Navy and Amazon, I work for MSC, which is the largest, today is the largest ship owner in the world. So I manage for them their digital transformation efforts in the United States, in New York. And after a few years there, I transitioned into Amazon.
Okay. And what did you do at Amazon?
I started with cross-border trade, so I was the head of global transportation products. So I was managing all the
Okay.
inbound of cargo from China to the rest of the world. And then I transitioned into AWS, Amazon Web Services, where I was global head of supply chain technology. So it was a much more technology heavy role with a lot of emphasis on AI, machine learning prediction, building those systems that are used by not only by Amazon and AWS, but also by very large customers of AWS to, for instance, predict when your car is going to be delivered after ordering it on your mobile app or ordering at a dealer. And we were able to tell exactly the day the car will be delivered to, I don't know, New Jersey from Japan, for instance.
So from that experience, like, was Secret born from that, or what came together to really launch this company?
Oh, okay. So I think I always had in me the pain of documentary workflows because at MSC, where I worked there, I took care of digitizing many workflows, including bill of ladings, invoicing, introduced robotic process automation, the very first rudimentary type of machine learning. And I kept this with me, the desire to go back to the industry, which is one of the most fascinating industry in the world, and help to transform maritime processes. And Sigro is born from that idea to leverage on those legal reforms that happen in multiple countries from 2021 up to now, and use those legal reforms that are enabling for the first time to digitize documents of title, for instance, in a robust way. So what I learned at Amazon AWS, I go back to my initial industry, which is very backward looking in terms of technology, and trying to exploit the opportunity there.
And I mean, it's interesting because looking at your background, I find it really interesting that you've worked in very structured environments. The military, Amazon's quite structured, but now you've also been navigating an early stage and growth stage business. Which one's easier? What do you like better about them? And like, what have you learned from those structured environments and then coming into something that's fast moving and changing?
Oh, well, I would say that Amazon, especially Amazon, has still a flavor of startup. So every team operates like a startup with very short lifespan if you don't deliver results. AWS is more structured in terms of being a very well-oiled sales machine operating at scale. And yes,
Yeah,
Navy is the Navy. The Navy in every country is pretty much the same. Is you just follow the rules and you go ahead with that.
right,
Whereas a startup is a total mess, is total ambiguity, especially at the beginning. You do everything and you do nothing, and I think that it has been a very interesting challenge for me to rewire my brain and make sure that it could work in such a level of ambiguity. And so far worked
right.
well. A lot of gray hair, more than when I started. But that's it. Yeah.
Well, I think it makes sense. I've worked in a lot of early stage, growth stage organizations, and I've worked with hundreds of them. And I've also had some experience working in some really large enterprise organizations. And I think what I've come down to is every organization needs to be organized. That's why we call it an organization, right? Because it needs to
Yeah,
be
correct.
organized. But I think at the earlier stage, it's just really trying to make the right decisions of what you want to organize and what needs to be organized. Because I think at the early stages, you're making a lot of experiments and you're learning different things. And then you need to feed that learning back into the organization and make more of those experiments. But that process of experimentation, I think, needs to be organized. And I think that's where some teams kind of go off, and it feels more chaotic because they're just doing a bunch of things and they're not being really organized about all these different little experiments that they're doing. And they're not feeding that information back in to make decisions as they keep on moving forward. So I think that cycle of innovation and learning needs to be in cycles. So you keep that input and do it in an organized way. As you scale, you start to add more layers, I think, of systems and organization, especially once you get past like 20 employees. I think it gets more and more complex. Now you have teams of teams. And I think that's where oftentimes the CEO realizes they can't be the system anymore. I think you can be the system under 20 employees, but once you get beyond that, I think it changes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have two comments to what you said. So the first one is you realize that you are not the system anymore when you get into a meeting and you don't remember what was the decision the meeting before. And you ask your team, can you remind me the context? So this is when you start to realize, okay, yes, this organization now is bigger than my brain, and my brain cannot contain anymore the organization. And is where you need to really hire people with a level of seniority closer to yours, and they can not number one be your next in line, and be ensure that you can scale with a span of control that is not too large. Otherwise, you start to drop balls, and you cannot juggle all the balls in the air at the same time. And the second comment is on what you said at the beginning, which is what I call the feedback loop. So in a startup, to me, the key to success, there are many interpretations of success. To me, it's the feedback loop. You need to keep short and very to the point, especially with customers. When the feedback loop is too long, especially now with the AI, you have an AI a feature of Anthropic killing 200 startups, right? In overnight, you gotta be fast, right? You need to understand very quickly where you have to go in terms of product strategy, geographical areas, what you have to drop in terms of feature, what you need to build, if you need to merge, if you need to acquire, if you need to be acquired. And now these decisions are overnight decisions. There is no more monthly or quarterly loop, even for startups.
Right, right. Yeah, I typically help teams get organized in a 90-day, focus around OKRs. But then we have the weekly meeting, which is really that like pounding momentum and beat and cadence of those small changes that we need to make. And sometimes we make big changes within those meetings too. But like having those weekly cadences, those monthly cadences, those annual, quarterly cadences, I think is what keeps everything moving. The time of a business plan I think died 20 years ago. You know, the business plan can last about 30 days until something changes, especially in today's world.
You should remind this to my board, so they will stop asking me to write business plans. No, kidding. But business. I have a great board, by the way. I'm very lucky. Yeah? So is right and just if I have to spend a couple of hours to write business plans sometimes. But yeah, business plans are somebody else more clever than me said are useless, but planning is essential because with planning you learn how to know better your people, your weaknesses, and your processes. So I think that what you do and the dynamic and the mechanism that you put in place with your methodology are essential for a company like mine or bigger than mine to really structure the feedback loop and the thinking process around decisions.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's really important. Um, I want to get into talking about teams. You have teams distributed across two different countries. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I have a team spread across two different continents actually because we have a few employees here in the United States, but then we expanded the company predominantly in Europe because Europe we have majority of the customers and because the especially for tech people you find the most cost effective resources there, right? In Eastern
Yeah.
Europe and in Central Europe. So this is where we have our team. Yeah.
How does that work for you, like keeping the team like going from vision to execution with people on different time zones? What are some of the things that you guys do to keep everybody kind of rowing in the same direction and staying aligned?
Uh, I think that until we were smaller, so until we were 20 people, let's use it as the golden rule, right? Was much easier, right? So the number of decisions and the span of each decision we had to take was not too big, not too deep, not too broad, and that was working very well. Today, the time zone is sometimes an issue because it delays the ability to bring everyone on the same calls, especially also when you have maybe people from Singapore for maybe Far East customers. Uh, I think there is no right or wrong answer. I think that you need to have the right people in the right place. So now I'm trying to layer in the organization some C-level in Europe are gonna help me to delegate majority of the decisions. So that part of the feedback loop can be localized in Europe, and maybe
Right.
after 12 hours when I'm again available, they can ask me, hey, for this maybe more long-term decision, what is your opinion, right? So I think you need to localize geographically the decision-making process and authority. That's my solution.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some upsides of having teams in different areas too. I think there's a lot of upsides having that.
Oh, you have a lot of diversity, which is fantastic. Because
Right.
when you have an Italian dealing with a Swiss guy, dealing with a Polish guy, and you put into some American venture capitalism, it's not a different dynamic that having the same dude for the same city speaking about the same stuff for all your lifetime, right? Maybe this kind of a extreme example, but this is what is happening in my company. We have people from 15 different nationalities working in a team of 35 people.
Yeah. Diversity is everything too. Like I think one of the core components I think of any team is with different types of people with different types of experiences. And every once in a while, I'll come across a team, and it's like everybody came out of the same school. Everybody worked at the same company before that, and I just look at that, and I typically wouldn't say I wouldn't do that, but I think in those scenarios, I'm like, you need to have a lot of different perspectives, and I think the more perspectives that you can have with good people that have great different experiences as well, I think that really blends together to create a really powerful team.
Yeah, indeed, there are also challenges though. So one example in which is peculiar to our company. So we deal with a very, as I said before, very backward-looking industry, which is maritime and trade finance around maritime and banking and insurance. So you need to deal with customers and subject matter experts that are not really millennials, probably not,
Mm.
they're far away from being millennials. You're talking about people in their 50s, the decision makers at that age. And on the other side of the barricade, you have developers that are the typical Gen Z guys, super smart, zero span of
Right.
attention. So how do you bridge this in a company where you have both the subject matter expertise coming from, and maybe I'm kind of in between still, although I'm getting more on the old side, and the developers. You need to blend these two souls of the company. One is super deep tech oriented, and the other one is very conservative in terms of how you pitch to the customer, how you gain trust, whining and dining, and build the relationships. And it's very, very interesting when you have those meetings with the sales team speaking with the tech team. It's like a dog, really barking to a tree sometimes, and it's fun to find the right middle ground.
You have to sometimes get creative with that, I think.
Very creative, very creative. Yeah. Yes, you have to pick a side and say, okay, this time maybe this guy's right, and let's learn from him. Whatever.
I think that's important too. I think empowering people. I always think one of the most important things that teams need to do is make decisions, right? And I think I see a lot of teams get stuck and not make a decision. And I really think that's one of the most important roles of any leader, especially the CEO, is empower someone to make a decision or make the decision yourself. But the worst thing you can do is just sit and stop. And sometimes when you have like a team, sometimes it's just okay to like choose someone to make that decision or go one way or the other way with different people that just to move things along.
Yeah, that's another, I think, psychological barrier that the founder of startup at a certain point has to either slam his face into or try to go around or dig underneath or jump. So how do you transition from the founder-centric approach where you take all the decisions, you go super, super deep everywhere because you have to, you're the only guy there. So go deeper into invoicing, deeper into the tech, deeper into the product, deeper into sales, to a point where everything is too big, is out of your brain, and you need to delegate. So the first problem is the bias, because you are teaching to people that are new to the problem how to solve the problem. They are better than you, most likely, and they're smarter than you, but they need to learn. And at the beginning, your bias is, oh, they're not doing it right, so I need to micromanage them. And and unfortunately, I do it sometimes, and it's very bad. But I have people in my team that are telling me, hey, you have go for a walk, actually go on a vacation for a week, let us do our job. You are paying us for this, we can do it, right? So you
Yeah.
need to have a team that has the gravitas and also the backbone to tell you, okay, great, stop, let us do this. And sometimes you need to let it go. So you need to learn how to let it go.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I had a fintech team that I worked with a few years back, and the leader came to me and said, one of our biggest problem is I want to be collaborative, but my team just doesn't like make decisions, and I want them to make decisions, and everything's bottlenecking through me. And so I worked with them. And in the first session I worked with them as we were doing, I think it was a Q4 session where we're looking at what's working and setting their OKRs for next 90 days. It was really clear to me that the CEO was telling everybody what to do. And the whole time, every exercise we did, they had a comment on everything that someone said. So nothing could be said by anybody without them like weighing another comment onto it. And I thought it was really interesting coming out of that. And, I had to give that feedback lightly, but problem is that they weren't empowered. So everything was going through them because they constantly were giving everybody their opinion. Now, that said, there are teams and certain, different leadership teams may have different levels of maturity on the team. And some earlier career people may need some more input and information to help them make decisions where, once you can hire like a CRO or a head of engineering that's been there, done it many times, then you can start going, what do you think? Or give me some relevant experience of what you've seen in the past. Which way should we go here? So I think there is a balance of, especially as someone comes in or early stages, providing enough input so they can help start to make those decisions. But eventually you got to let go, I think. And that can be sometimes really hard for founders.
It's very hard. I mean, it's like when you have your own baby, right? It's hard to give it to the babysitter the first time, right? And
right.
We both know this better than me because we spoke before about the number of kids we have in our households. You need to learn how to trust somebody else with your child. I think that also is a sign of the level of maturity of the founder. And again, I'm not the best example here because sometimes I'm micromanaging people. I admit that. But also is a statement of a level of maturity of the business, because think about this extreme example where the business is going very well. You are selling that there was no tomorrow. Everyone is firing on all the cylinders, and your EBITDA is great. Your investors are happy. Your customers are happy. There is no churn. You're gonna go on vacation. I'm gonna go on vacation, and I say, guys, see you in a month. I need to recover
Right.
from all the last 4 years of effort. But if things are not working, you have pressure to deliver. You try everything that is in your power. And what is the easiest way? You just dig in and you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, which is counterproductive, but is what everyone will do
Right.
to try to stay afloat.
I think that's true. I think that's a easy reaction for a lot of people. And what you're really trying to do is create alignment or create clarity so people can define what they need to do and how they're going to do it, right? And I think when there's lack of clarity and the group can't create clarity, I think it's really easy for the behavior of the founder or any leader just to give orders, just do this,
Yeah, giving
you
orders
know?
is easy, right?
Yeah,
But you know what? And then you go to the definition: what is clarity, right? What is clarity, and how do you achieve clarity? Because there are many variations of that, right? And you have the perception of clarity as well. And sometimes people are telling only part of the story because they know part of the story, or they are able or willing to tell only part of the story. So you need to peel many layers, and
yeah,
probably the founder that went through 2 or 3 rodeos can feel in his or her guts what is really happening, and there are many parallelisms here with being a captain of a vessel, a commanding officer of a vessel, right? But the first time you're commanding a vessel, you're clueless and you're really bracing. But you see, when you command the second, third time, you know exactly what is going to happen. It's like a second. You don't second guess yourself anymore.
mm, that's interesting. I can see how that would be. I work with a lot of first time founders, second and third time founders, and it is interesting. I think it's the persona of the person that actually makes them successful. And I think most of them are people that obviously very driven, very passionate, but they're reflective and they take action. And I've seen some that really struggle. They're only reflective or not taking action, or ones that take action are not reflective, right? And I can see that using your analogy, of someone like in that kind of naval capacity. Um, it would be hard that first time. That second time, you start to have more knowledge and information. The third time, you start to really probably be confident in what you're doing,
Right.
and know and felt those emotions before, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You know the emotion. You know how this gonna. Your guts know how the situation is gonna end up, and you don't react. You act before, right?
Yeah. I want to back up to something I think is really interesting, specific to your industry. It's highly regulated, highly conservative industry when you're working with banks and insurance, but your product's very innovative. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, because it's a double-edged sword. When there is something that is innovative in a conservative industry, it's very unlikely you're gonna have rapid adoption, which is not good for the investors, because the investors, they don't see you as a fast winner, which they love. They love fast winners because clearly they want their IRR to go up quickly. But there is an upside there, which is you are sticky, because if you are successful and the industry is adopting you, there is not a lot of competition. So in our industry, probably have 1 or 2 competitors in a $30 trillion industry, because it's
Mm,
extremely difficult to penetrate and to win market. And you stay there forever once the big players are picking on your product, are starting to using it. You have also a lot of dead bodies in the industry, people that tried and didn't succeed. So I think it's a gamble, right? Um, but you choose your own challenges. You can pick something that is much easier to scale, but also much easier to imitate. Right? And I was debating on LinkedIn often during the last month about all these great AI companies that are predominantly agentic companies that are proposing to cut down the cost of operations for also for many companies in our industry. It's great, but they're not going to survive the next 3 months because somebody a little bit cheaper or faster is going to come up and is going to totally eat them alive, right? So I believe that the deterministic platforms with a lot of compliance embedded, even if they are innovative, they stand a better chance to last longer.
What's your definition of a deterministic platform?
So if you look at generic AI type of solutions, you ask a question, you can get 10 different answers, right? Depending on the nuance of the question. A deterministic platform is something that has a known input and a known output. So the known output is either determined by the workflow that the customer requires, or by industry standards, or by regulatory and compliance requirements. So you know exactly what to expect. So you get something that is automated, is faster, is safer,
Right.
is more robust, but you're not gonna get for the same input different outputs. It's always the same.
Have you guys, in your exploration of leveraging AI in this environment, any challenges that you've had with it right now
Uh, I think that the
that you
big
think maybe others are maybe having similar challenges?
so we are trying to layer on top of our platform AI that makes sense to the client. So
Hmm.
usually is automation of mundane tasks, and then we have plans to add additional features like more sophisticated analysis to provide suggestions to the user, especially if you have risk involved. So how to mitigate risk, how to predict risk about certain transactions. The main challenge is to find out what really makes sense to the customer and what the customer is willing to pay for. So clearly need to distinguish between nice to have features and features that are gonna drive maybe usage driven revenue. And this is very difficult in an industry that is not very techy and is also a little bit scared by AI because the first thoughts are, okay, how are you using my data? Where am I going to sit? Is something that's going to go out with, I don't know, ChatGPT, and everyone is going to use this data to train their models and inference. So you need to spend a lot of time into explaining, which sometimes makes the effort not really worth it.
That's interesting. Do you think it was easier to define your product roadmap in the early stage, or now that you have a lot of clients and you're more in the growth stage?
I think it's getting crisper because we learned what the customer need in terms of the main capabilities and features. But at the same time, open a lot of can of worms because what the customer need is flexibility. So we built a suite of features and low code, no code development capabilities to be more flexible and adaptable. But then this put us in front of a conundrum, which is basically, okay, now instead of doing one workflow, we can do basically every type of workflow. So shall we stay only in maritime and cross-border trade, or maybe we can go after other industries, which is kind of a dilemma because you don't want to be spread too thin and have not enough resources for your initial customers, but it's also an interesting opportunity.
I think that's true right now with the no code, low code, vibe coding. I think a lot of people, their idea of what their product can be and what can they do so quickly is expanding it more broad than it is actually going in depth. And I think also, especially using kind of the vibe coding, I think what people are finding is it's so fast, but it's that last 5% takes 95% of the time. It's you can do a lot with these systems, but that last 5%, really tweaking it, really getting in the weeds, I think is the hardest, most challenging thing. And I've seen a lot of teams and companies go very broad with their product because they're like, oh my gosh, we can develop so much now, where they probably should be going deeper, more directly at that ICP. Have you
Yeah,
seen that?
yeah, no, I agree because I mean the when for instance we go so our platform is highly configurable, so we can bring to the customer a library of features and we can listen to the customer and say, okay, you want this type of workflow, you want this type of document, you want this type of AI capabilities to parse maybe some data, and then you want some type of digital signature. We can pack this into a bespoke flow. But then this is something that you want to expand to the extent of covering the entire organization of the client, or you want to focus on a specific part of the client's organization. Let's say, let's do only your logistic workflows. And then after we do this very, very well, we can move maybe into finance workflows and then into admin workflows. Because if you go to broader, maybe you have a lot of bandwidth in terms of technology, but what is the bandwidth of your client? Everything, especially in B2B, is about change management. It's not about the technologies. 99% change management. That's the real challenge. Right?
Mm.
It is about
That's
people
interesting.
people and teams, right? So
Yeah.
how can you help the customer teams to embrace the new technology and adopt it?
The experiences that you had prior to creating the company, what was some of the, or give me like maybe one moment that really changed your leadership style? Like what, any specific things that made a big impact on how you lead today?
I think that one of these moments happened back in the days in the Navy, where I was a commanding officer of a vessel, and we suffered a major issue. We had a fire on board when we were at sea. So what was no one got hurt, but it was a kind of a process to get back to normal and get back to port. And we basically had the vessel out of service for 6 months, and we had to go through a cycle of repair. And I tried very hard to micromanage the situation and push and push and push, and nothing got out of it. On the contrary, right? So this is where I learned that sometimes you need to just, if probably I had given to my team more freedom to act, we would have got back to normal much faster. So I think that was where I got a first lesson on let it go. Right? And now with my startup, the same happened with multiple customers, and the desire of being a founder-led sales process wasn't paying anymore. So I think that hiring a professional sales team has been the right choice that is helping us a lot. So, probably the lesson learned that time is paying off today after a decade.
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning, you got to do everything, right? You got to do everything in the beginning, and then you have to find that time where you have to make that decision to hand it off. And I think what's tough is even when you hand it off, it's jumping into issues and problems, going deep, and then zooming back out, then zooming into another problem, maybe over in products, and then you zoom out, and then you like zoom into customer success or sales. I think it's that zooming in and out that can be probably the most exhausting for a CEO. And furthermore, like I think that act of going in and out, hopefully you're just blocking and tackling and let them making decisions. But it's easy to get in there and start getting too deep, I think, with some of the leaders.
You go into a rabbit hole, especially if you deal with something that you really like. And everyone has a bias, and every one of us, maybe somebody likes coding, somebody else likes Excel, somebody else likes PowerPoint, somebody else likes speaking to customers. And if you go into one of those rabbit holes, and then it's hard to get out. So I think there is more an art than a science. How much time you put out of your day into what really matters. And sometimes deciding not to stick your nose into something is the right decision, because somebody else has to pick it up in your team, right? And if somebody else doesn't pick up, it means that you don't have the right team. And if somebody tries and makes a mistake that is possible to correct, is a two-way door, then it's great because somebody is going to learn. But you said very well. You have so many things you need to deep dive, and it's also, I think, a way your brain, because it's really a brain rewiring that happens in your career as a startup founder. You have a part of your brain that is strategic, a part of your brain that is very tactical, and they have to work together. And man, it's sometimes painful because you really need to rewire your brain. It's a biological
Right.
process.
Yeah. One of the most simple things, I think today it's still so simple when we do this with teams is write it down. Like, I think the power of like writing your vision down or your 3-year vision or your 1-year plan, like having that written and visible for everybody to see over and over again, like this is something that we all know, right? But it's interesting when I first meet teams and talk to them about it, how little of that is seen or was on this board deck or it was, in this investor update, or we had it in the beginning of the year and it was on, an Excel spreadsheet or something. But so funny how so little companies like have that stuff. And if they have it, it's like hidden or buried. And I think like one of the easiest things switching your brain back and forth is just have that present and let everybody know what it is.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer into documents coming from Amazon, the peer FAQ at Amazon, the press release and FAQ document that define the launch of a product doesn't exist. And I remember when I was in my early days at Amazon, I saw on my desk this peer FAQ of Project Cooper. Okay, Project Cooper, we're gonna launch 5,000 satellites. So we have no idea what they're talking about. But what was written in the document happened after a few years. So that's the power, and also believer on the power of manifestation. When you manifest something, you really believe in something, and there's no better way to do it than in writing. This thing is gonna happen one way or another. So especially when you work with a team that is geographically dispersed, it's important to have a center of focus where you can really capture all the information and the guidelines for the project. So a peer FAQ or even a PowerPoint deck is essential to capture this. And maybe it's going to happen a different way, but it's going to happen. And I was looking at my hard drive a few months ago, and I found this deck that I've written in April 2021. And there was a slide about the flywheel of Secro working with banks and insurance companies. And it's what is happening today after 4 years. So that was wow. Okay, I printed it out and put it on the wall of my office as a reminder that you gotta dream big and you gotta capture this in writing to make it work at a certain point.
It's so interesting. I don't talk about manifestation a lot, but I totally believe it as well. And I think that's part of that visioning. And I think sometimes as founders, we just catch some sort of signal that's something that's out there that we can actually do. I actually have a piece of paper like down here. I can see it. I've never shown this before. This is really funny. It's a cartoon sketch of my business idea, my business plan of this business 10 years ago, and block by block, like how I'd build it out. And I told myself I'd be happy at stopping at any stage of this. But looking back at this, and I'm at step 6 right now, it is very accurate. And there's actually one piece in there that I did before the process, but that I wasn't planning, and that part didn't work. And I looked back at it the other day, and I was like, wow, if I would have looked at this, mapped this out, it's very, very accurate. Every stage of this process for collective genius. And I literally made that, I think, probably 8 years ago. I wrote it down, and I still have that piece of paper over there. There's 9 steps. I'm at 6.
You need to frame it, right? Is a statement to your manifestation skills.
Yeah, there's a couple little errors in there. I was a little ambitious in a couple of those, but there's a couple errors in there. But yeah, I really think that's true. I think that's part of the exercise and part of the tools that we use with teams. So I think is that we want to look at that mission at least once a year. Is there anything that we need to edit, clean up? We don't need to spend a lot of time on it. Define that 3-year vision. Let's all agree what that looks like. Define that 1-year plan, 90 days. If we can define where we're going, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, and then have a communication where we can iterate on those things and change those things, because things are going to change. I think that's so important. But the process, like you said, of like defining it and aligning to it, I think that's how you manifest it. I think that's part of the system, part of the process.
Yeah, and I think that the next step in a company that is growing is how you make sure that everyone in the company believes in the same vision and contributes to the vision practically with their work, but also with their, I would say, mental alignment. because you need to have a North Star and one is to believe in it. And this pushes things through incredible hurdle and obstacles that you will think I will never go through this, but I said you go through it and you make it because everyone is pushing. And when I think about Amazon, how the company grew so successful and overall in a relative short period of time is because when Jeff Bezos started, he hired the right people with the right belief system and the right mental energy to push this through and propagate across the company and the ecosystem of customers and partners the same culture, right? And this is what on a clearly much smaller scale we are trying to do at Secro, right? We try to hire and promote and also fire and grow people and talent because of their strength and push, not only work-wise but also mentally.
I love that example. All right, Michele, I got one last question for you.
Go ahead.
This is the most important question I've ever asked, ever. I'm glad you're sitting down. Super important question. It's actually more of a scenario. And here's the scenario. You are trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. You have food, you have water, you have shelter, you have everything that you possibly could need. But you're there for the rest of your life. One thing that you don't have, there's one thing you don't have, and that there is no entertainment on the island at all. No entertainment. But luckily for you, an old radio boombox drifts ashore with unlimited batteries. But Michele, you can only bring one album, one CD, album, whatever it is, to listen to the rest of your life. What album are you going to bring?
Wow. The Wall, Pink Floyd.
You answered that quick. The Wall, Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Double disc set, too, so you get extra. Oh, that was a good move.
Exactly.
That's a great one. You can't go wrong with The Wall. You can't go wrong with The Wall.
There is so much. This is where you can really go very, very deep, right?
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me on Tech Scenes. I appreciate it. Great conversation.
Jeff, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed the chat.